Well, I remember hearing an amazing lecture many years ago when I was in seminary, 15 years ago or so. It was by a professor from Harvard, and she was giving a lecture on the difficulties in the modern world, contemporary situations for the church. And it was a little bit of a depressing talk, I freely admit. And towards the end of the talk, after she laid out all of the sort of the ideological and philosophical challenges that the church faces in fulfilling its mission, one of the seminarians meekly raised his hand and he said, well, what's the program? Like, what are we going to do now, you know? And what she said to him, I'll never forget how simply she said it. She said, well, we have a program, and it's called the Second Vatican Council. The reason I'm recounting this story to you is because every now and then at Catholic Breakfast, we get questions about the Second Vatican Council. What is it? And there's just different, sometimes strong opinions on what the council was about. Let me read to you a question that we got here not too long ago by someone named Justin, and I really appreciate his question. Pope Paul VI clearly stated in his speech closing the Second Vatican Council that it did not produce any dogmas. Here's his question. Why is the present church trying hard to dogmatize the Second Vatican Council and do away with tradition? I'm not sure I understand the question exactly, Justin, but what it does raise up, I think, is the broader question of what was the Second Vatican Council and what's the program? So I went back and reread Paul VI's speech, summarizing the council and closing the council, kind of the marching orders for us. And I just want to lift up to you the end of the speech as a way of understanding, in some ways, the whole council. Here's Paul VI closing the Second Vatican Council. He says, would not this council then, which has concentrated principally on man, be destined to propose again to the world of today the latter leading to freedom and consolation? Would it not be, in short, a simple, new, and solemn teaching to love man in order to love God? To love man, we say, not as a means, but as the first step toward the final and transcendent goal, which is the basis and cause of every love. Let me stop there. What Paul is saying here, Pope Paul VI is saying is, yes, the council was different in this regard. It focused, maybe more than any other council before, on man, on the human person, on struggles that the human person faces, especially this modern man or the contemporary human person. That is unique. And yet, how does the council understand that work? He says it's like a ladder. It's a ladder from the world of today to freedom and consolation. It's from man to God, to finally friendship with God. You hear these two misrepresentations of the Second Vatican Council. One is, look, the council is there to give these dogmas. It's just, it's meant to just say, here's what's true. On the other hand, people will say, no, the council just wants to promote dialogue with the human person, just concern for the questions that the modern person has. Questions about the environment or a nuclear holocaust, etc. Neither one of those is what Paul VI is saying here. His is a much more nuanced thing. It's a pastoral council. It's the image of the church with all of the confidence that she has in the truth and vigor of her teaching, of what's been revealed in Jesus and the deposit of faith, he says earlier in his letter. But the church is going pastorally as shepherds, wanting to use that teaching to move the human person from simply temporal concerns, created things, to the goal of all things that's been revealed in Jesus, which is friendship with God. Now, with that in mind, listen to how Paul VI closes the council. He says, and so this council can be summed up in its ultimate religious meaning, which is none other than a pressing and friendly invitation to mankind of today to rediscover in fraternal love, and now he's going to quote Augustine, to discover in fraternal love the God to turn away from whom is to fall, to turn to whom is to rise again, to remain in whom is to be secure, to return to whom is to be born again, in whom to dwell is to live. Does the church of today want to dogmatize the Second Vatican Council? I would say no. At our best, what we want to do is take all the teaching of the council in, not simply as speculative truths or whatever, but as pastoral truths, missionary truths, to help us encounter where people are really at today, and then to move people towards what we're created for, which is union with God forever. So if you haven't spent time getting to know the Second Vatican Council, get back and read it, and read the documents. A great place to start may actually be Pope Paul VI's closing letter of the council, which was it was a delight to read it, and it helps us understand what the council is really about, inviting the human person of today into that eternal truth, which is we're made for union with God forever.